The life of a sports reporter is not for the faint of heart. Many dedicate their entire careers, their entire lives, to the pursuit of a story worthy of being told. The stories themselves are appreciated by millions, but the storytellers, not so much. Who are they? What is their story? What have they learned from this crazy adventure? It's the storytellers that always have the neatest stories. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Storytellers Stories. I'm Haley Kate Webb, and I'm joined here today by the voice of the Harding Bisons, Billy Morgan. Billy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Haley Kate. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, so can you just start off by telling me how you got into the sports media and broadcasting business, if that was always your plan or if it just happened that way?
Well, like most little boys, I wanted to play sports and played sports throughout high school and tried to play a little bit in college. And it finally was very apparent that that was about as far as I was going to be able to continue playing sports. And I wanted to be involved in sports. And as long as I can remember, sports was always something that was my hobby. If it was baseball season, I watched or listened to baseball on the radio or watched it on television. Football, basketball, those three sports were very big in my life, but also radio was such a big part of my life growing up in the 70s and 80s and listening to anything from the World Series to to hockey, anything that I could find on the AM dial. I would listen to, and as well as watching the games on television. Back in those days, obviously not as much sports on television. We didn't have all the cable networks that where games are televised now. I'm a big baseball fan, and so I would listen to Major League Baseball on summer nights and maybe get to watch one game a week. My parents were great to take me to games, and we would go to Major League games and collegiate games. As well as NFL games. And I always noticed that the radio announcers and the television announcers had very good seats at the games, and were always a part of the events. And so I thought, man, maybe that's the way I can stay involved. So I could tell you back in the 80s, probably in late 70s and into the 80s, as much about the radio voices of a particular team, like the Kansas City Royals. I'm a huge fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. Back in those days, listening to the Razorbacks, I can remember listening to Harding Bison football as well when I was a youngster. So those gentlemen, I knew so much about, and would when a lot of kids were maybe talking to players after games and getting autographs, whether it be at a big league game or at a racing event. I've always been involved in stock car racing. A lot of times I would go and seek the announcers out, and I just wanted to know their stories. And I found that they were mostly very genuine and nice people that would always give you the time to visit. And so many of those people were such a big part of me wanting to be involved in sports broadcasting that they were as big, if not bigger, to me as a youngster as the actual athletes that I was keeping up with, because I felt like I had a connection to those guys.
Mm-hmm. I relate with that too. Some of my favorite people are sideline reporters that make me want to do it. Okay, I read somewhere that you are a licensed auctioneer. So tell me about
Yes.
that. And does that help you prepare for radio?
You know, when you go back to that, it's probably one of the reasons that I've always felt comfortable with the microphone in front of me was watching my dad. My dad is a Hall of Famer in the Arkansas Auctioneers Association Hall of Fame. And so from the time I can remember, I would follow him around going to auctions and sitting behind him and watching him work, seeing how he interacted with people. It's a different form with the microphone, but really he's telling a story as an auctioneer, and so I think it opened my eyes to being in front of people, being comfortable with a microphone, and yes, I've been a licensed auctioneer since 1994. I'm still involved in our family business a little bit, not as much as I was many years ago. I just don't have as much time to give to it. But yeah, my dad was such a big part of me wanting to pursue being in the auction business, and also with the sports industry, because he was such a force in making sure that that I had the opportunity to always be around him when he was working. I got to tag along everywhere, and so yeah, I think it does. I think it goes right along with it. I think there's a correlation between the two, and it's the auction business is a fun business, and it's such a tradition in our country as well.
Yeah, I love how you said that he tells a story through auctioneering, I guess is how you say
Mm-hmm.
that, which
Yes.
I've never really thought about that. But I want to know your opinion on how the storytelling is different between maybe radio and television, and what you have
Well,
to do to portray that story.
yeah, there's no doubt it's a different. It is different with radio play by play. You just have to close your eyes. I mean, I did this so much, and I think what helped me so much was as a youngster, I can remember sitting in the pickup truck and listening to AM radio and listening to games. Well, I couldn't see anything, and so the announcer is telling that story, whether it be a sunny day or whether it be raining, or whether it's a left-handed batter, or whether the football field, if the team is driving to the right in front of them, and which way the plays are going. Every little thing you can't take for granted. You have to describe every single play. If a running back all of a sudden darts back to the left, sometimes I'll say a term like he planted his right foot and drives back to the left and down the field. You have to paint the picture really for the listener as to where in television, when you're doing the play-by-play. And right now, what I do with the Bisons, we stream so much to where some people are listening, some people are watching. So you have to keep that in mind. And with television, I think so often some of the great broadcasters that I can remember listening to, the Vin Scully's and Al Michaels, when I was young, listening to them, so many times they would let the pictures tell the story in a big event, in a big play, maybe late in the game, and let the pictures and the crowd, the emotions on the field come out and everyone see that, as to where in radio, fans can't see that. If there's a celebration on the field, particular manager or coach embracing a player, then the only way that the listener maybe knows on the radio is if you explain those things, and it is a different balance between the two.
You mentioned Vin Scully there, and I watched a video on Vin Scully one time, and he was talking about his notebook that he had full of poems and go-to quotes and things that he would pull out at different times during his broadcast. Do you ever keep a list of go-to things that you can pull out during different games, or is it just all impromptu?
Most of it's impromptu, but I do have different things that are filed away now. At one time, they were on index cards. I can remember carrying index cards with me and had a folder, and maybe at some point pull something out. Now we all have iPads or our laptops that we can go and find files. But I think the best moments are when they are just impromptu moments and feelings in the game. I can remember you talk about Vin Scully in the 1988 World Series when Kirk Gibson comes up, hits a dramatic pinch hit home run. He called the play, and then Vin Scully's story was that he turned around and left the booth for several minutes just to let the emotions of the pictures to show all of that. There are some of my favorite moments, though, in fact my favorite moments are impromptu moments that we've had at Harding and at different schools that I have been, in which the crowd plays such a big part in me describing a game. I feed so much off the energy of a crowd, and I think that obviously we love to watch the athletes compete. I love to watch the coaches compete. I love to watch the referees. The referees are such a big part of games, and umpires, and they're doing the best that they can. And it's so important that they want to get the calls right. I just love the emotions of games. And I think there are so many stories within the games. And I love to talk about the stories after games that maybe people don't see, that maybe I see in the hallways after a game, back in a locker room, those moments that are just pure emotion that come out. But I love the crowd. My favorite time at a sporting event in which I'm working is the bigger the crowd, the better, the bigger the moment. I think it's where we all feed off.
Yeah, they always talk about in sports broadcasting the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, and
Yeah.
that kind of, it reminds me of you saying that emotion that you find in the game. Do you think that one of those, the thrill or the agony, is easier to see and an easier story to tell? Do you ever just look for one specifically, or do you have a favorite to talk about, or just your opinion on that?
Well, I love to watch just like the facial expressions, the emotion, and not in defeat. Obviously, those hurt, and I hurt for the athletes. I hurt for the coaches, particularly hurt for maybe someone is at the end of their career, a senior that maybe got to the last instant there, and it's such a dramatic moment that it's over, particularly in the postseason. Those are the toughest losses when you see the faces. I just have so many memories over the years, and with us talking, and we talk about Harding. Obviously, the moment when the Lady Bisons won the Central Regional, with the fact that was on campus to go to the Elite Eight, and I have so many people come up and ask me about the final seconds of that game, probably as much as any call I've ever had in my career in 27 years. Because of what I said after, and nothing was that was not scripted. That was just playing off emotion of the crowd, the fact that it was on campus, and so I don't. There were so many different memories that I have in my mind from that game, from getting there when there was no one in the building, to watching the building fill up, to watching the team down by 18 points. Thinking at halftime, and honestly, well, this has been a great run, but we're about to watch the final half of the season. To watch the team come back and win and advance to the Elite Eight, just the jubilation that I saw from Coach Kirby, from the basketball team, and then all the students had just come back from spring break, so they were just back on campus, and there was all of that, and then there was the afterwards. I can remember late into the night, something a story I never able to tell during a broadcast, but we were in the back room. It was Scott Good, Nathan Looney, and Jeff Montgomery. We were the only folks still in the Rhodes Reeves Fieldhouse into the wee hours of the morning, wrapping up stories. And I remember we had a photo, the four of us back in the press room. That photo to me is a memory that I will be so proud of for so many years, because of those three men. I love them, and to get to share that moment with them.
Yeah, okay, well, I just got to feed off of that now and ask you if that was your favorite thing that you've gotten to cover, or if something else beats it.
Well, I don't know. I think that probably is, without a doubt, the top five. And I've had people ask me, you remember the Bisons had such a great run, the football Bisons a few years ago, going to the national semifinals. That was such a magical run. So many dramatic victories. And the year before, that team had so many dramatic victories, a win in overtime up in Sioux Falls. And then, but the next year, that team, that's one of my favorite football teams, because it started out 0-3. And people don't remember that. And that team got on such a run and went on the road and won the three playoff games to get to the national semifinals. And then I think the disappointment of that, though, when it was over, was when we were talking about the different sides of the emotion, because that team was so much fun to watch. The reason I say the Lady Bison basketball team that won the Central Region, that one will be hard to top, simply because it was on campus. Mm-hmm. And I talk about feeding off the crowd, and you could not have fit another person inside the field house that night, and with everything on the line like that, and to eventually see that team go to the Final Four. But obviously the national semifinals, that was very close. You remember that was such a tremendous year. The Lady Bison softball team had a great run to the Super Regionals that very same year, and almost went to the Elite Eight. So some of my most fun moments, without a doubt, have come at Harding, even though I haven't spent my entire career at Harding, I have spent the last 14 years, and Harding's such a special place, and there's not a bigger Bison fan than I am. So to see the success and to have the seat and to get to tell the story, I really consider that a tremendous honor.
Yeah, so you say you're a Bison fan, and my favorite question I've been asking everybody is, can you still be a fan? Is it hard to still be a fan while you're working it? So I want to ask you the same question. Can you still be a fan, and how is it different when you're just covering one team?
I don't think you can be a fan while the game's going. I have, fortunately, I think if you go back and listen to my early years, I was at Arkansas State for 8 years, doing football and basketball and baseball. And I sometimes go back and I can listen at that time in my career, in opposed to now my career, because I do have more experience. And I think that you have to, when the ball goes up in the air for tip off, or they kick it off, or the first pitch, whatever the sport may be, when it starts, you have to take your fan's hat, I think, off. Now, human nature takes over. So there are moments like the end of that game for the 2017 basketball team, in which it came down to the final 3 seconds of the game, that, of course, you're maybe reminding yourself, hey, tell the score, tell what's going on, just tell what you see in front of you, and then you react, I think, with the emotion afterwards. There'll be time for you to go and to have your moments with coaches, with players, with fans as well. But I think that 40 minutes that the game's going on, or whatever particular sport, how many innings we're playing, I do think that that's extremely important, because if you let yourself be a fan and you let yourself get so invested, then every bad call that goes, you feel like, against your team, you interject negativity into the event. Mm-hmm. And you have to keep in mind that we're there to tell the story. We're doing a job. I mean, I'm there for that set reason. I'm not there to lead cheers or to have any effect on how someone should feel about a play, whether it be a positive or negative. But I do think that is such an important question that you just asked, that you cannot be a fan, and there is a line that you cannot cross over, whether it be positive or negative. And I think there are certain words that you don't want to hear during a broadcast. Say, I'm doing the Bison games, and you're listening, and most probably 95% of the people that are listening are rooting for the Bisons with me. But there's the occasional person that may watch it, particularly now in the age of live streaming, where we're doing the games at Harding. And I have to be aware that there are visiting fans, family members that are watching the game, and they have their rooting interest. So they want to hear the story told of the game. They don't want to hear my opinions, and they certainly don't want to hear me use words like we, us, them, those things like that. When I talk about Harding, I talk about the Bisons. When I talk about the opponent, I talk about the opponent. I don't use we and us. I think that can get you really, really in a difficult spot.
Yeah. The Harding community, I feel like, is so much different than a lot of other places, and because it's such a close-knit community. And so I'm curious if that impacts your experience interviewing coaches, because these are people you see around town, you see at church. Is there a difference because you have a personal relationship? How does that make it easier or harder to talk to them on a professional level?
Well, I think it definitely makes it easier the more personal you are with coaches. And I go back to when I was young, other gentlemen in the industry that taught me back in those days how to conduct interviews and how to ask questions. And they all had good relationships with coaches. I've been fortunate to work for 27 years in play-by-play, and I can honestly say that I've never worked with a coach that I didn't genuinely like. But you bring up a great point with the fact that Harding, it is a family. Paul Simmons, I do a weekly show with him during football season, and it's so much, I wouldn't ever use the word easy. There are difficult times after losses, obviously, but it's always probably easier, even though I don't want to use that word, for you when you have a personal relationship with a coach, with Jeff Morgan, with Tim Kirby, with all of our coaches, Dr. McGahey, Coach Barry. I start naming them, I have to name them all, but I know you don't have time for all that. But all of our coaches, I mean, Greg Harris, I love to just go and see Greg Harris smile at Harding, even if we're not, maybe at a ball game, and just to see him in town. And you're exactly right. When we have those relationships with the coaches, I think the same things with the players as well. I think you need to have that relationship with the players to where they know you. The big thing with coaches particularly is a trust factor. And so it's no different working with a coach as it is working with anyone in any industry that you are. There has to be a trust that is built. And I'm very fortunate to work with such great people. You talk about Coach Fear. I mean, we just have so many great people at Harding. All the coaches definitely make my job very, very, very nice. And I love my relationship with all of them.
Okay, you talked about all of those guys that you learned how to conduct interviews from and that you talked to. And I know here at Harding, you are that guy for so many students. You're the guy that we look at to learn how to conduct interviews and to have that trust factor with coaches and to build relationships. So can you touch on what it's like to not only have a professional career as the play-by-play and the voice of the Bisons, but then to also have the opportunity to work with students and to do things like this, because it is so influential for the students?
Well, Haley, Kate, I appreciate you asking that question. I mean, it's an honor for me to sit down and talk with you and discuss the things that we're talking about today. And that's one of the things that I haven't had at other places that I've worked. Harding is the only place that I've been able to have such a relationship with the students that are wanting to go into journalism, communications, broadcasting. And I value that, and I hope that all the students know, and I know I've told you, and I hope that everyone knows that my door is always open. So I take this as serious as I do if I'm sitting at First Security Stadium and we're about to kick it off for the playoffs and try and go win a national championship. It's just part of what I get to do, and I'm very honored to have that opportunity. And any time that I can give just a little bit of a tidbit to someone that wants to get into this industry, that is such an honor, because I do remember those people that helped me all those years ago, and trust me, I take those words are still in my head. One quick bit of advice: I've told Tim Hamilton this. He worked with Paul Eels for so many years. Paul Eels, the great voice of the Razorbacks for so many years, one of the best pieces of advice he gave me when I was in my early 20s was, he said, Billy, he said, never talk with a headset on. Never say anything with a headset on that you wouldn't say in front of your grandmother. And I just thought that was such great advice. The microphone is always on. Be positive, and just try and do the best that you can, but always be ready to do your best.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other advice that you would give to anyone that wanted to pursue this career path?
Well, any chance you get to work. The one thing that I've been disappointed with just a few times, but I have had, and not at Harding, but I have had different young broadcasters many years ago tell me, well, I got asked to go and work a junior high game, maybe do PA, maybe do this or do that. And it wasn't exactly what they wanted to do. Never turn down an opportunity to work your skills, whether it be doing public address announcing at any kind of event. My first event I ever worked was a junior high basketball game on the radio for no money, sitting behind a school desk in a gym in the corner on a baseline. But it was a great experience, and I never turned down an opportunity to put the headset on. And don't get discouraged when things are not going right. Take every chance you get. You have such an opportunity now. In this day of the digital media, where you can copy and you can tape all of your broadcasts. Do that. Let people listen to that. And when they give you a critique, don't get your feelings hurt, because trust me, I've had people tell me what I was doing wrong my whole career. Take that. Some of the best times that I've learned are when I failed, and just learn from that. But yeah, every chance you get to put the headset on, do it.
I love that. And that's great advice. Well, Mr. Billy, I could talk sports and reporting all day with you, but I'll let you go. That's all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Haley. Kate, always wish you the best.
Thank you.